Though we travel the world over to find the beautiful, we must carry it with us, or we find it not. Dear Sarah, I'm sending everyone I know one of these cool letters turned airplane letters because I think they're super awesome. Plus I found out I've been making paper airplanes wrong my entire life. These ones fly really good. That's cool. That's instructions. I'm not good at it either. I'll have to try. I really enjoyed your story about your great-grandfather's postcard pal and how you visited the son's grave. These are the moments so many take for granted. I'm thinking of posting all the postcards my mom sent my kids, one every day of her vacation in New Zealand. The one trip she wanted to take before she died, and she did. My great-grandfather owned the barbershop in the Roosevelt Hotel in downtown Seattle. That's awesome. I hope someday to find the whole story. Have a blast. Love always, Betsy. P.S. I found this whole box of paper airplane stationery at Goodwill. Brand new, like recycling. This is a great time for me to tell you just a tiny bit about the story that Betsy mentioned. So if you've been following me for a little while, you know that last summer I was given my great-grandfather's postcard collection, which is always right here with me. I will show you quickly. So it came in this wooden box here, divided by country and US state. There are a lot of postcards in there, and over the last year, I have been taking them out and scanning them and putting them in archival sleeves. Hold. So these are the ones that I have scanned and sleeved so far, and these are the ones that have been scheduled for Postcard Happy Hour. I schedule about a month of Postcard Happy Hour at a time. It's quite a bit of work, but it's really fun. So as I've looked through the collection, I have done some research when I'm getting ready to share. And if you don't know, Postcard Happy Hour happens on my Snail Mail Superstar Twitter and Instagram accounts. You should go follow us over there, and then you'll get to see one of my great-grandfather's postcards from the 1920s every day, which is super fun. But as I've been sharing them and scanning them and looking at them, I've been Googling the people who my great-grandfather wrote to. And I don't find very much. It's sort of a fruitless endeavor. Every human life has infinite worth, but not all of us make a paper trail on Google. We do now because the internet is everywhere, but from the 1900s and the 1800s, there are so few reasons to be in a newspaper or, you know, to hit Google in some way that would help me know these people better. So I have a hard time finding anything, but I keep searching just on the off chance that I'll find something important. And I was especially interested in the person that my great-grandfather wrote to here in Seattle, because my great-grandfather, he never came to Seattle as far as I know. He lived in the Midwest and ended up in Florida, which is where I was born, where my family ended up, and then I moved out here with my husband, and my family followed me out here. This was kind of far away from Illinois and from Florida and the other places that my great-grandfather lived. So I was really interested in the person that he was writing to here, since this place is my chosen home. And I'll show you a few of the postcards. I have them in plastic for safety. They are of locations in Seattle, and all sent in the 1920s. There are a couple more, but these are the ones that I grabbed. There's the backs. They were all typewritten on a typewriter. They were all sent to my great-grandfather from a man named Ralph W. Ives, and he was a mail carrier here in Seattle. And there's not a lot on the back of the postcards about his life, but I just thought I should Google him and see if I could find anything. So I did, and pretty quickly I realized that this was not that same Google situation where nothing came up. I found something really quickly. What I found was a newspaper article from a newspaper in Montana, and unfortunately Ralph's son, who was a teenager, had drowned in Lake Union here in Seattle. The family had moved to Seattle from Montana, so the newspaper in Montana had published an article so that their friends and family in Montana knew that this happened. It really broke my heart, honestly, to read about this man's worst day. Because there's so many things in life that are so wonderful, all of our best days. And at the end of our lives, 100 years from now, I want to think that I'll be remembered for some of my best days, some of the most important things, the legacy of what I'm leaving on Earth will hopefully be really positive. But for a lot of people, the thing that made the paper trail was a tragedy. And for Ralph's family, it was a tragedy. So I kept Googling and I kept finding things, and I actually realized through my search that Ralph's son, Alman, was buried in Queen Anne in this beautiful old cemetery that's about a mile from my shop. So on a cold morning in February, I drove over there and I wandered around and realized that in the hundreds and hundreds of graves, I was never going to be able to find it by myself. So I was super nervous about asking for help, but I did ask for help. And a lovely woman looked in these big binders and looked through the registry of all the people who are in the cemetery and found where in the cemetery that this young man was buried. And he was buried in the farthest back section of the cemetery. And when you enter, you see a lot of names from the same era, but they are the names of the families that founded the city. So names that, you know, like Mercer and other names like that that are really memorable because they have streets named after them and buildings named after them here in the city. So the people who founded the city were right in the front of the cemetery, and about as far from that as you can get was this young man's grave. And they told me the lady at the cemetery told me that a lot of times families didn't have the money for the big fancy headstones made of marble or granite, the ones that would stand the test of time. So they would make these permanent, giving honor to the deceased, but these small headstones that were made of concrete. And over time, it's been over 100 years since this young man was buried, that nature had taken back over them and covered them in soil and grass, and that the cemetery had over time recognized that they were safer underground than they were with the elements, with wind and rain and everything being able to touch them. And so they leave them buried and hidden away so that if someone like me came and asked, they could uncover the headstone and show the person, and that then they would cover it back up and protect it so that in another 100 years they'll still know where that person is buried and be able to read their headstone and have that memorial. So the lady showed me where to go in the cemetery, and I went to that back edge, and another lovely young woman came and actually found exactly the spot and revealed the headstone for me. So through such a crazy experience. So through finding and being given my great-grandfather's postcard collection, reading this correspondence that he had with someone here in the city that I love, I was kneeling in the grass, in the rain, looking at the headstone of a young man who had died tragically here, the son of my great-grandfather's pen pal. But it was a crazy experience. It was a beautiful experience, and I'm not doing it justice here. I find that I'm much more eloquent with written word than with impromptu spoken word. So I wrote a blog post all about this and why it felt important to me to bring flowers to the grave of someone that I'd never met because everybody deserves to be remembered. And this young man lived in the city that I love. He walked on streets that I walk on, and his life ended too soon, and I wanted to remember him. So that's what I did. Snail mail is that paper trail that we can leave to remember our best days. Because through these postcards, I know that Ralph Ives loved church buildings, and he loved postcards and he loved delivering the mail that he typed on a typewriter. And I know that I can infer that just like last year when I lost my friend and I reached out into the world of snail mail to feel connected, I think Ralph did that too. Because he lost his son. And what do you do when tragedy hits? You try to connect. You try to feel like the world is still a place of connection. So that's the story of Ralph and his son, who was also named Ralph, but went by his middle name, Almond. And I don't know, it was important to me. And I hope that, I don't know what I hope. I hope that somewhere his family knows who he was and remembers him. And I don't know, I would love to believe that somewhere in a cemetery, my great-grandfather is being remembered as well. I can't get there right now, I'm far away, but it's important to me. All right, now it is time for me to get down to the shop and get some things done today. I appreciate you being here and watching these videos, and I hope that you have a wonderful day and that you get at least one letter in the mail if possible. That is always best case scenario. So have a great one, and I will see you in my next video.
Snail Mail Superstar.